Good morning, friends and enemies. Welcome into the wide receiver preview show for week 13. You will be seeing this prior to Thanksgiving Day slate. We will be going game by game, Thanksgiving, Sunday, Monday, and letting y'all know whether you should sit, start, or flex every fantasy relevant wide receiver. No teams on bye, all 16 matchups. We did the exact same thing for running backs this morning. We will link that down below if you want to go check that out before your matchups kick off tomorrow. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody, because this will be the final video of this particular week in week 13. So let's get right into the Thanksgiving Day matchups. First matchup of the day, we've got Green Bay at Detroit, 1 p.m. Eastern time, kicking Turkey Day things off. Detroit, 2.5-point favorites is a 48.5-point total here. Amon-Ra, of course, is going into the must-start category. If we take a look at practice reports, we've got double DMPs for Graham Glasgow, Kirby Joseph trending towards not playing as well, Khalif Raymond, Lucas Van Ness, Savion Williams, and Brock Wright. So both teams will be without a bunch of secondary pass catchers that don't matter really entirely for fantasy. Brock Wright being out, though, does take away some targets from the tight end position and probably put it towards Amon-Ra, Jameson Williams. Now, I know a lot of people are not going to feel great about Jameson Williams coming off of the donut game, but more often than not, I think when Dan Campbell's calling the plays, he will dial them up for this man. So I think the game environment will be pretty good. 48.5-point total here. So for JMO, I mean, he's going to be teetering between the feels good and the dub flex category, whatever you want to categorize him as, but he probably should be in your lineup based on the upside swings of what he gives you. On the flip side, you have a semi-similar player in Christian Watson. Now, Jaden Reed limited in both practices so far this week. Matthew Golden limited in both practices so far this week. So they were both trending towards, one, Golden making his return, Jaden Reed, two, making his first game action return since I think it was week 2 when he broke his collarbone, got the foot surgery, all that stuff. Now, I don't imagine either of these guys will have a huge snap share, as like Watson and Romeo Doubs are pretty much running every single route here. Watson has pretty much been between 40 and 60 receiving yards over the last month of the season, and that's where Vegas kind of has him pegged, 56.5 receiving yards as his total. I think him and Jameson Williams are similar players. Detroit is a good matchup for the passing game on the opposite side of things, so I'm going to put Watson into the dub flex category. Dobbs just really hasn't shown any ceiling, so he's going to go into the shaky flex category here, though I wouldn't be like entirely scared of throwing him into my lineup. Jaden Reed, we're definitely going to want to see at least one game out of him. I could see him being like a 50% snap guy, though I will say, you know, if he's properly healed, he should resume like a really heavy slot role in this offense. No Tucker Kraft. So again, probably going to want to see one game out of him before he's in my lineups, but should be pretty good down the stretch. I think Matthew Golden hasn't really done shit this entire year. So we'll throw him into the rather not category and move on to the second game of the afternoon. We've got KC at Dallas. Now, KC is 3.5-point favorites, 52.5-point total here. CeeDee Lamb's line is at 80.5, 6.5 receptions here. I think those ones pretty clean and cut. You can argue, you know, Pickens, Lamb, Pickens, who's better? I think it's fucking fool's gold trying to have that conversation. Like, what's the point? They're both going into your lineups, no doubts about it, and trying to pick who's going to have the bigger day. Tough matchup, obviously, against KC. They're a very good pass defense right now, but I mean, based on what we've seen from Dak, the Cowboys, Pickens, Lamb, like the opportunity is crazy. The playmaking ability there is crazy. The upside is crazy. Must start. Same thing with Rashee Rice going against this Dallas defense, which is admittedly improved, but still pretty soft against the passing game across the board. They got diced up by A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith last week. And then the secondary players, a little bit trickier, I guess. Like Xavier Worthy, you want to have him in your lineup because the matchup is so good. He's just really produced close to nothing since Rashee Rice has returned. So Xavier Worthy can go down here, and then Hollywood Brown's running like 40% of the routes. So again, good matchup, but like rather not have him in your lineup. And then just quickly checking in on the practice reports here. No fantasy relevant players, but it looks like both sides of this one will be missing 2 good offensive linemen. Tyler Guyton for the Cowboys, Trey Smith for the Chiefs. Moving to the final game of Thanksgiving, we've got Cincinnati at Baltimore. Cincinnati, 7-point underdogs here, 51.5-point total. Obviously, this game is all about the return of Joe Burrow. No T. Higgins. Jamar Chase, of course, goes into the must-start category. He might get 15-plus targets in this one. Zay Flowers, his line is really good. He really hasn't shown much since that week 1 explosion game, and it felt like, okay, Zay Flowers is finally taking the next step, and then he just reverted to what we know Zay Flowers as. He's going to catch 5-6 balls a game, probably end up with 50 to 70 yards, and you know, every 3-4 games he'll catch a touchdown here. The Bengals defense is atrocious, obviously, as you could see. The single highest EPA per play on passing downs per their opponents and allowing the single most points per game to defenses. So Zay Flowers, I'm going to throw him into the feels good category. 66.5 as his receiving yards total. Matchup is there. So, you know, we see a lot of shootouts between the Ravens and the Bengals as of recent years. So we're going to throw him there. Andre Oshavas, his line's at 34.5. He had 60 yards last week, 4 catches with Jamar Chase sidelined. Again, I just don't think he's that great of a receiver. Like, I don't think he's warranted being put into the dub flex category, but he's definitely worthy of a flex play if you really need him. So we'll throw him into the shaky flex category, and we will move to Black Friday. We've got Chicago at Philadelphia here. Philadelphia, 7-point favorites, 44.5 point total here. A little bit on the low scoring side of things. I'll also throw this out. This is going to be a week that I think weather impacts a handful of games as well. I'll try my best to cover those as the games kind of pop up right now. I think Chicago and Philly is supposed to have a decent amount of wind, 15 mile per hour sustained winds, gusts pushing very close to 30 miles per hour. Wind by itself is not anything to like sit guys or get nervous about, but there are other games like San Francisco at Cleveland. There's going to be a decent amount of wind, a decent amount of rain, possibly even like some snow showers there in Cleveland. So that game could get messy and definitely affect the fantasy players in that game, but we'll try to touch on them as we continue to go through. It might also be why games like this have a little bit of a lower over-under total. Now, for whatever reason, we don't have Philly practice reports, but I don't think there's anything like overly concerning on their end. However, Chicago's defense is in shambles pretty much right now. They missed their 3 starting linebackers last game, and it does look like they're starting the week off with DNPs on Tuesday. Does not mean they're out. Tariq Stevenson, DNP on Tuesday, but Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon, both full practices on Tuesday. So they didn't get back to game action last week, but it does look like they're trending towards returning this week, which would be a massive upgrade to go against A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. So this could be a game where Philly tries really, really hard to establish the run here. I don't know if that shit's going to work because it has not worked all season. They will be without Lane Johnson in this one as well. When I'm looking at Devontae, when I'm looking at A.J. Brown, you're coming off the big game against Dallas. Maybe these cornerbacks return. It does look like it's trending that way, but I think the lack of success on the ground has kind of pushed them to pass the ball a little bit more. And overall, if I'm looking at Devontae, I'm looking at A.J. Brown. Weird to say based on how this season has gone, but I think I'm going to throw them into the feels good category, you know, both of them here. On the flip side, you got Rome, who has been really disappointing since his hot start to the season. You obviously have a really tough matchup against Philadelphia. Rome's going to see a lot of Quinyon Mitchell, so listen, I think he's got the upside. I think he's probably going to see the highest target share in most games going forward. So I'm going to throw him at the bottom of the dub flex tier, and I think there are a lot better options. Like when you look at the Vegas lines across the board, Rome's got a lower line than J-Mo. He's got a lower line than Christian Watson. He's above the shaky flex guys, but not by a huge chunk here. DJ Moore and Luther Burden are both guys that I'd like to stay away from if I could, but they're going to go at the bottom of the shaky flex tier because, you know, everyone's kind of just splitting targets in that offense. Loveland, Burden, Moore got 2 touchdowns last week, but not a huge receiving total. Luther Burden's running more routes, but he's still number 3 in the pecking order and haven't seen that like explosion game while he's actually healthy alongside all the other receivers. So we'll line it up like that. Arizona at Tampa Bay, next game here. So we've got Tampa Bay at home. They are 3-point favorites, 44.5 point total. There's still a lot here that we don't know, and that's mostly concerning Baker Mayfield. So apparently, we're not going to have any practice reports because I'm filming this very early on Wednesday morning for any of the Sunday games. So you guys are going to have to keep a close eye on that. You have to keep a close eye on the weather reports as the week progresses. But I do really urge you guys to like do your own research on the weather reports because that will impact some of the matchups this week as the games progress. So what we've heard is that Baker's trending in the right direction. He has a AC sprain, I believe, in his non-throwing shoulder. So this was similar to what Joe Flacco had. And then Joe Flacco went out and threw for like 450 yards. Most guys like Baker who are like super tough will be able to take a shot and kind of play through it, and it won't overly affect their passing game. Like there will be times where maybe it does affect them like a little bit here. Maybe the deep accuracy is a little bit off, but at the end of the day, I'm expecting Baker to play and I'm expecting us to have 90% of Baker. And this is a great matchup for both sides. Like, again, I talked about it in yesterday's running back matchup video. Like the 44.5 point total feels very, very low given how both of these passing offenses could explode on any given week. I know Baker's looked a lot worse for his wear over the last month or so. This passing offense has not really clicked much. So we'll start on the other side of things with Marvin Harrison expected to miss another game, I believe, in this one. Michael Wilson, he's going into the must-start category. I don't know how you can argue any other version of this. I actually really like Greg Dortch as well. back-to-back games of 6 receptions, back-to-back games of scoring a touchdown here. And again, with Jacoby Brissett just slinging the ball, and it's kind of condensed to Wilson, McBride, and then Greg Dortch. And I like the matchup here. As you can see, it's just green across the board. He's going to go into the shaky flex tier, but he's going to be relatively towards the top. Maybe not the top, but definitely in the middle part of that shaky flex here, and you could definitely do worse in full PPR leagues. On the other side of things, Chris Godwin's going to be a rather not. Tez Johnson, I think, is actually a dub flex. Like, he continues to get it done one way or another, and I like the way that they utilize him. So in this matchup against the Cardinals pass defense, I like Tez Johnson here as a dub flex. And then Emeka Egbuka, he's a tough one because he's really struggled as of late. You're seeing a lot more defensive attention on him without Mike Evans on the field, obviously. And I'm curious when Mike Evans will actually return, if he does return this year, which I do expect that to be the case. I haven't heard much on him, but for now, it's Emeka. And the Cardinals will be with their stud rookie cornerback, Will Johnson. So it makes the matchup a little bit tougher. Overall, though, if I have Egbuka, he's obviously going into my lineup. He's not going to be a must start. He's not going to be in the must start category. He'll be in the feels good category, definitely towards the top of it, because we've seen what kind of games he can have. But yeah, definitely a little bit of cause for hesitation just based on the defensive attention he's getting, the way that Baker Mayfield's playing, the injury to Baker Mayfield. There are a lot of conflicting attributes to go along with the hesitation on Egbuka. Keep moving down the list. We've got Atlanta and we've got the New York Jets. This is a 39.5 point total here. 2.5 point favorites for the Atlanta Falcons, coming off of like an okay day for Kirk Cousins in the passing offense. We saw Mooney go 3 for 75 and a touchdown here. Decent chance for some rain in this one. Winds around 10 to 15 miles per hour with stronger gusts. So a little bit sloppy. This could definitely turn into a sloppy game. As you could see, the total of 39.5 kind of tells the story for that one. Darnell Mooney's definitely in between that like dub flex, shaky flex tier. I still think he's going to end up being the top target in this offense more weeks than not while Drake London is out. And I don't expect Drake London to return for this game. So Mooney's going to go into the shaky flex tier. On the other side, I talked a bit at length about this in the waiver wire video as well as the recap live stream for the Jets. You have Mitchell and you have John Mechie, who with Garrett Wilson out, both of them are seeing like almost like 30% target share in this offense. All the targets are going to them with Tyrod Taylor. I do expect a very heavy dose of Breece Hall and just the ground game for the New York Jets going against the Falcons run funnel defense. Mitchell's getting all the deep targets, A-Dot over 22 yards. John Mechie's getting a lot of like cheap PPR dump off plays, which is leading to a high floor for his PPR outlooks. And he's similar to Greg Dortch, where he's typically going like 6 for 50, 6 for 60, and a touchdown. So if I put Greg Dortch down there, I think I've got to put John Mechie down there as well. I'm obviously more hesitant on Adonai Mitchell because the production hasn't been there. But like I've been saying, the underlying usage is there. He's getting the targets. He's getting a ton of targets relative to the passing volume in this offense. He's getting downfield looks, valuable looks, just hasn't been coming up with a lot of them because a lot of the targets are just simply not catchable for him. But any given week, that can kind of flip the script here. So he's going to go into the shaky flex here. I don't want to get him into my lineup, obviously, but I do think if you're super desperate, like there will be a pop game eventually from Adonai. Moving to Houston at Indianapolis. In this game, we've got about 4 or 5 startable wide receivers, depending on where you're at in your lineup. It's a 44.5 point total, so not expecting fireworks in this one. They are in Indy. Indy's 4.5 point favorites here. Now, from everything that I've seen, DeMeco Ryans has kind of inferred that CJ Stroud will finally be back from his concussion for this game. So say what you want about Davis Mills. I just think this is an upgrade for the Houston Texans passing offense. Nico Collins, 66.5 receiving yard total in Vegas, 5.5 receptions. We'll see plenty of Sauce Gardner, not overly concerned with that matchup. He's got an identical line in Vegas to Zay Flowers, 66.5, 5.5 receptions, plus 120, plus 134, and anytime touchdown. That being said, I'm not going to sit Nico Collins. There's no chance of that. I'm going to throw him into the bottom of the must-start category. Also, you see all these lines, you see all these props, you see all the stuff on the screen here. Throughout the week, I'm taking like a billion different plays on MGM, some parlays, some straights, whatever, over-unders, totals, spreads, all that kind of good stuff, some underdog stuff. You can see everything that I take on the Pick'It app. That is a free to download app. And when you do so, which we will link it down below, it's like a social sports book betting tracking app, you can say, right? So you can go on there, download the app for free. Don't need a credit card or anything like that. Use code BDGE when you download it, PIKKIT. And it'll automatically follow our accounts. And you'll be able to see everything that I take because I sync my sports books with the Pick'It app. And you can do the same as well. You can get your friends on there and you guys can all like sync your apps. And there's a calendar that tracks how well you did over specific weekends, over specific months. So you can like contrast and compare how y'all are doing together. There's also like just a copy bet button on the app. So if you see I take something and you like it, you can literally just hit copy bet and it will sync it to whatever sports book that you sync your account to. So go download the Pickett app, use code BDGE. It'll follow us automatically, and then sync your sports book on there as well if you want to copy any of the plays that I end up taking on there. All right. I don't know that I'm going to take anything from this game in particular because it's a little bit of a tough outlook. You've got Pierce, you've got Pittman, you've got Josh Downs, all going against, obviously, the most difficult matchup in the NFL for opposing wide receivers. The Houston Texans, dead last in fantasy points per game allowed to the wide receiver position, dead last in EPA per pass allowed to opponents, and second to last in points per game allowed to opposing offenses. These two teams have not played each other yet, so we don't really have like precedent on how these receivers will line up against this defense, etc. here. Alec Pierce usually excels against single coverage or single high coverage, I should say. Pittman's more of like a zone beater here. I think at the end of the day, both of them have been good fantasy receivers. They've been consistent for the most part on a week-to-week basis. I don't want to take a 1 week sample size where Alec Pierce didn't play well after playing well for like 8 weeks. And I think Pittman and Pierce, despite the really tough matchup, probably belong in the conversation with like the Rome and the Tez Johnson more so than like the Darnell Mooney's, the Jaden Reeds, the Romeo Dobbs. So I'm going to throw them both at the bottom of the dub flex tier and continue on. We've got Higgins. His line is at 36.5, 3.5 receptions. He's been, experiencing a little bit of a breakout as of recently. 9 targets in the last game, running more routes. He's the second leader in snaps behind Nico Collins at the wide receiver position. That being said, he's not yet a full-time player. He's still only running routes on like 60 to 65% of dropbacks. He's a big target in the red zone, so he's viable to catch a touchdown at any given week, but he's not making a ton of big plays. Like he's, catching about half of his targets right now. So I do think we kind of follow that Vegas line there. And I do like Higgins. Like I think the matchup's decent and they'll have to throw the ball a little bit. So I'm going to throw him closer to the top of the shaky flex tier for sure, but I don't think he's a dub flex quite yet until we see concrete, number 2 wide receiver running 70+% of the routes here. Josh Downs is going to go into that shaky flex category. So is everybody else in this game for the most part. Moving to Jacksonville at Tennessee here. We have Jacksonville as a 6.5 point favorite, 42.5 point total here. This is another game that I believe will be slightly affected by the weather here. Let me pull up the report, I believe. A chance for rain, though it looks right now the better rain chances are pregame, not in-game. Okay, so not actually overly concerning here. It is a low point total, mainly because Tennessee cannot score points on offense, though Cam Ward's probably coming off of his best game. Alec Ayumaner is expected to return this week, despite not practicing at all last week with the hamstring. I was kind of hoping he missed another game, so Shamir DK could be an interesting flex play, but that does put all of these Tennessee receivers now into the shaky flex, like at best area, despite Calvin Ridley being out, despite Tyler Lockett being in Las Vegas. Now, the more interesting side of things is the Jaguars receiver group, because they got a great matchup against Tennessee, as you can see. 4th in all of these categories, 4th most fantasy points allowed, 4th in EPA per pass allowed, 4th in opponents' points per game allowed. Brian Thomas Jr. has been practicing on a limited basis for like a month now, and it does sound like he will actually be returning this week. It's a messy receiver room. There are a lot of targets that need to be shared here between BTJ, Jacoby Myers, Parker Washington, Brenton Strange's return, and then obviously the running back room with Travis Etienne and Bashaw Tootin. So my favorite receiver, unfortunately, still is Brian Thomas Jr. Is he a must start? Definitely not, but he does have the same Vegas yardage line as A.J. Brown, as Devontae Smith. He's above J-Mo. He's above Roma Dunze. He's above these other guys. So I would play him because the matchup is so good, again, above most of these dudes. But again, in a week where there's no teams on bye, you might have some better options. Moving past that, Jacoby Myers has been a really solid play for the Jaguars, and I wouldn't be surprised if T-Law, who has built some trust with him, continues to lean on him. So Jacoby, definitely not an auto sit with BTJ returning and Brenton Strange returning. I think Jacoby Myers is actually a decently strong flex play here. He's going to go into the shaky flex category because, again, I think the volatility of the targets plus the game script should be in favor of a lot of running back touches in this one. But Parker Washington, Jacoby Myers, both going to go into the shaky flex tier. And as always, if you guys actually want my full rankings, which will be live by the time you guys watch this video, that's available on bdge.co to Big Dog members. But as you can see on the top here, if you go to our partner website app MGM, deposit $10, play any slip on there, but make sure you use code BDGE when you do deposit. You're going to get 3 months free of our membership, which obviously has our rankings in included there. All right. So MGM code BDGE, $10 deposit or more. Let's move to the Rams at Carolina here. We've got the Rams as 10-point favorites, 44.5-point total, Super Bowl favorites, MVP favorite Matthew Stafford. He's going to make Devontae Adams and Puka both go right into that must-start category. The only other conversation really to be had here is Tet. It's so tough to rank him in a matchup like this because the Rams defense is so good. They're going to destroy Bryce Young in the backfield. Bryce Young, for the most part, when he's not playing Atlanta, throws for like 140 passing yards, but Tet's target share is just so high. He's capable of making that big play, any given drop back, like we saw on Monday Night Football against San Francisco, that long touchdown pass. So it's like you can't throw him into like shaky flex territory, but based on the matchup and based on what we see from Bryce Young, typically he's going to go into the dub flex category. Like I'd probably still play him above these guys because he's going to see like a 30% target share, but I'm not expecting a huge day out of him, obviously, based on the matchup. Xavier Legette, I think you could probably make the argument that he can be in the shaky flex category, but who cares? You're not making the playoffs if you got to have him in your lineup. New Orleans at Miami. This one, to me, feels pretty clear-cut. You got Olave, you got Waddle. This is a 6-point favorite game for Miami, 41.5-point total here. You got two guys with receiving props of over 70 yards. So I think Waddle and I think Olave are their team's entire passing offense. Both of them are going to get a shitload of targets. Both of them, to me, are must-starts this week, and we can move forward. San Francisco at Cleveland. This is the game, like I've said, I'm most concerned about as it pertains to the weather. So honestly, the receiving options here are pretty clear-cut. I don't think there's a single guy I actually want to throw into my lineup. You've got Brock coming off of one of his worst performances as a pro against Carolina on Monday Night Football with good weather. So you throw him into Cleveland with some rain, with some winds, and I am very not confident in any pass catching player in this game outside of C-Mac, outside of Kittle. On the flip side, you got Shedeur Sanders getting another start here. Shedeur with bad weather, very concerned about. Though I will say San Francisco's defensive line gets like negative pressure on quarterbacks, so he should have some time in the pocket. But again, if the weather gets worse, this is one to keep an eye on for guys like Juwan Jennings or even Jerry Jeudy. But Juwan, for as good as he's been in this offense, he's going to be a shaky flex tier for sure at best. Ricky Pearsall goes into the shaky flex category, has done very little since his return. Yeah, I don't want to start anybody else in this game from the receiver group, so we can move along. Minnesota at Seattle. Next game up, we've got Minnesota as 11.5-point underdogs. They are in Seattle, 41.5-point total. Seattle's defense is awesome. JSN is the GOAT. Shaheed and Cooper Kupp are zero factors on this offense. I mean, the big talking point here obviously has to be JJ McCarthy's in concussion protocol. It does look like Max Brosner will get the start for them. Say what you want about JJ McCarthy and how bad statistically he's been. I don't know. You throw Max Brosner in Seattle as a one start. Yeah, I have very, 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 very little confidence in the Viking side of things. I do think Jefferson should probably have a very high target share, somewhere in the 25 to 30% range, but he'll be ranked as like my wide receiver. This is the lowest he'll be ranked on a weekly rankings, probably since he's like entered the league, maybe since like week 4 of his rookie season where he broke out and just didn't look back. So yeah, there's just no way you can feel good about Jefferson with Max Brosner under center. And I guess it doesn't really matter. Like they're in Seattle. It's just going to be a terrible game script, a terrible offensive output for them. And then Jordan Addison, of course, is going to go into the shaky flex tier. A lot of players you would start over him at this point. Buffalo at Pittsburgh. So we've got a 3.5-point underdog game for Pittsburgh at home, 47.5-point total. For me, the only two players that you're considering at the wide receiver positions for these teams are Khalil Shakir and DK Metcalf. Shakir is going to be a dub flex for me. Again, same thing I've been saying every single week is like, he's going to be the wide receiver 29, 30, 31 at the end of the year. Take the good with the bad. I like the matchup. The Steelers are allowing the single most fantasy points to the wide receiver position on the season right now. And they don't have any other pass catchers. Dalton Kincaid might be back for this game. Right now, the last update we have is Bills head coach Sean McDermott said Dalton Kincaid is improving. This was 4 days ago. So yeah, I don't know what to make of that. Well, I obviously have to wait for practice reports. If Dalton Kincaid's out, this feels like another good game for Shakir here. Good matchup, should get a decent target share here. On the flip side, we've got DK Metcalf, kind of just been awful all year. So he's going into the shaky flex category for me. The Bills defense, not a great defense, but they're much better against the pass. They have a strong cornerback group between the rookie Maxwell Harrison, Christian Benford, and some of the other guys out there. So Metcalf, I'm not running to get him in my lineup. I'm not running to get any of these Buffalo, Pittsburgh receivers in my lineup either. Vegas at the LA Chargers here. 10-point favorites for the Chargers, 41.5 point total here. Pretty gross. The 3 highest receiving yardage totals in this game are the 3 Chargers receivers here. Ladd McConkey only at 52.5, Quentin Johnson down at 40.5, Keenan Allen right below him at 39.5. It's a really good matchup against the Raiders. Again, the Chargers are probably going to struggle a little bit to defend Max Crosby because they're without their top 2 tackles, and Crosby's just a fucking beast. But the Chargers' pass defense is very good. So it's going to be a very tough matchup for a guy like Trey Tucker. So he's had his games, but tough to rely on a week-to-week basis. I had a dream that Tyler Lockett had a really big game. That's the only logic I can give you for this week. Yeah, I had a dream that Tyler Lockett had a big game. This is how you know I'm like, my life is, I'm in like an alternate reality right now when I'm waking up in the middle of fucking week 12, having nightmares about Tyler Lockett having a big game. I'm in it right now. I need the offseason bad. But we are not quite there yet. So we're looking at Ladd, we're looking at Quentin Johnson, we're looking at Keenan Allen. I feel good about Ladd. Quentin Johnson had a good week before their bye, but prior to that, he was being used as like a fake X receiver down the field. Oronde Gadsden, their awesome rookie tight end, has really emerged and exploded and really like fucked things up for Quentin Johnson and Keenan Allen in terms of their target share. Keenan Allen is running about 60% of the routes right now. That being said, I do like the matchup. You're never going to be able to predict like how these guys produce on a week-to-week basis. We have seen that Ladd has really taken the number 1 role in the pecking order, though. And honestly, if I'm looking around, I know the receiving yardage lines are low. 40.5, 39.5, and that's lower than all the dub flex guys. That's lower than a decent chunk of the shaky flex guys. But if I'm setting my lineup and I have Romeo Doubs and I have DK Metcalf, like I'm starting Quentin Johnson over him based on the matchup. I'm probably starting Keenan Allen too. So I'm going to throw them at the bottom of the dub flex tier. Moving to Sunday Night Football, we've got Denver, Washington here. We've got Washington as 6.5-point underdogs. That feels a little spicy there. I'm not sure what I'm missing in this game. Jaden Daniels, I'm almost positive, is not playing again, and it'll be Marcus Mariota. Their defense is horrendous. Denver's defense is awesome with or without Patrick Surtain. Yeah, I mean, I'm laying the points with Denver for sure in this one. Courtland Sutton, much less consistent over the last month or so, but I love the matchup. He's going to go into the dub flex category. There's no lines up for him yet, but he's going to definitely flirt with the very top of this area here. I think Troy Franklin's obviously the other name in this matchup that you got to like. I'm going to throw him into the shaky flex category because I do think they do a lot of PPR scam type shit for Troy Franklin, and this could be a very heavy dosage of the running back room against Washington's slow ass linebackers here. He's going to go towards the top for sure because he's been consistent, and I think you can make the case for Pat Bryant. Actually, no, he's going to go into the rather not because we haven't seen him run enough routes and being a big snap guy. On the flip side, again, it's Marcus Mariota. You got the Denver defense breathing down his neck there. Hate the matchup for them. So Deebo Samuel, very involved, obviously. Terry McLaurin did return to practice on Monday, apparently. It's not an official practice report, so we don't have anything concrete there. So Terry McLaurin could return. If McLaurin returns, that means that like Deebo and Terry are both dudes that I'm not looking to start here. Fucking up the target share for everybody. Really tough matchup here. Even if Terry is out for this one again, Deebo I don't feel great about, so he's probably going to stay in the shaky flex category towards the top of it because he will get, his opportunities in this game, but going to be a rough outing for Washington. Moving to the Monday night matchup, we got the New York Giants at the New England Patriots here. The Giants are 7-point underdogs, 46.5-point total in this one. Wan'Dale coming off of a monster game last week with Jameis Winston. Jackson Dart is expected to return for this one. But Wan'Dale's target share has been really high. Honestly, I don't know that I put him into the category because he has up and down games for sure. And I think with Winston, that big game was kind of like pretty easily seeable, at least some sort of high ceiling game. Dart obviously has a much lower passing volume outlook for the offense here. So despite the Vegas line total here, I think I'm going to throw Wan'Dale into the top of the dub flex tier for right now. He doesn't feel like someone that I think needs to be in the conversation of these guys at the moment. I think Stephon Diggs feels pretty good as a flex as well. So despite him, not having a good game last week, and oddly enough, this is kind of weird, but he didn't run that many routes. Kayshon Boutte and Matt Collins both ran more routes than Stephon Diggs. So that does play into this a little bit. And I do think because of that, we could probably throw Boutte and Matt Collins both into the shaky flex tier. Their receiving yardage props are very low, 36.5 yards for Boutte, who did lead the team in wide receiver snaps last week. So even coming off of the multi-week hamstring strain, he did go right back into his number one-ish role. Matt Collins still ran about 70 to 75% of the route. So they should play a lot. Diggs playing a lot of the slot, but this is a really good matchup against the Giants pass D. So I like a bounce back game for Stephon Diggs. Darius Slayton, not really involved here. Should see a lot of Christian Gonzalez on the perimeter here, so he's going to go into the shaky flex category towards the bottom of it. And that is about 1,000 players. We'll put it into poster mode for y'all real quick so you can see. You don't need to see the rather nots anyways because you're cooked if you got one of those guys in your lineups. But here's every fantasy relevant wide receiver ranked as I see the board for this upcoming week. All right. And as always, these rankings will be live on bdge.co by the time you watch this video. So go sign up for the Big Dog membership. You can get it for the cheapest price, 3 months free, by going to our partner app or website, MGM. Using code BDGE when you deposit $10 or more, you'll get 3 months free once you play a single slip on MGM. And of course, if you want to track all of my picks and all of my slips that I make for this week, the Pick'It app, free to download, down below, linked code BDGE. That'll follow us. Make sure you sync one or more of your sports books on that app as well. We could follow each other and see what we doing on there, all right? I love y'all. Good luck. Happy Thanksgiving. Tell your mother I said hi. Tell your mother I said I'm thankful for her for making you. And you watch these videos and you hit the thumbs up button because you appreciate them. And I appreciate you, which is why I'm giving you a smoochie right now. Mwah.